I'm Sunita Viswanath, co-founder and executive director of Hindus for Human Rights. We are a US-based nonprofit just 3 years old, but building a base of progressive and anti-caste Hindus across the US, in India, and in diaspora countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Our mission is two-pronged. On the one hand, we add an unapologetic Hindu voice and force to the resistance movements against the Hindutva chokehold on Indian democracy and the rights of minorities. Equally important are our efforts to lift up, practice, and embody the most inclusive and progressive tenets and practices from Hindu traditions and texts. The first part is outwards facing, our work in the world for Loka Samgraha, or the welfare of all. The second part is more interior, our efforts to answer and address how does an anti-caste Hindu live, and what does Hinduism look like without caste? The topic of today's gathering is the patriarchal and caste-based assault on constitutional rights. The situation currently being faced by filmmaker Leena Manimekale, someone we in Hindus for Human Rights have become quite close to, makes explicit the misogyny and casteism of Hindutva ideology and its current regime. An established and award-winning Indian filmmaker Leena's small film, Kali, which she made as a fun graduate student project, has turned her life upside down. The Hindutva critique of the film is that it is anti-Hindu because in Leena's film, a performance documentary, the goddess Kali, actually the filmmaker herself in a Kali costume, walks around Toronto during a Pride festival holding a Pride flag, drinks alcohol, and smokes a cigarette. The viewer sees the local Toronto revelers' reactions to Kali walking through their city. Leena, as Kali, never changes her expression throughout the evening. She's equanimous in her response to each person she encounters. There's nothing anti-Hindu about Leena's Kali. In Leena's own community in rural Tamil Nadu, the goddess Kali is earthy, as she puts it, and devotees offer her meat, alcohol, marijuana, and cigarettes. Hindu traditions do not discriminate against the LGBTQ community. In fact, the Hindu divine transcends form and gender. And so why is Leena facing 14 FIRs, or arrest warrants in India? Why does she receive so many disgusting, vile, violent threats of rape and murder described in detail on social media? And why did a Hindu priest in North India offer a reward, a bounty for her beheading? Is the act of reflecting, meditating on a Hindu goddess's response to a melancholy modern Western city anti-Hindu? Or are the threats of rape and beheading and arrest anti-Hindu? The attacks on Leena Manimekale stem not only from misogyny, but also from casteism. For it is communities of the so-called lower end of the caste spectrum who worship Kali in such earthy ways. The Hindutva project is to homogenize Hindu practice and render anything but purely Brahminical practice blasphemy. The god most often associated with the Hindutva project is Rama, and the Hindutva Rama never seems to have Sita by his side. Leena is stuck in Canada. Her beloved grandmother died and she couldn't go home. She feels alienated and depressed in Canada. Her family, her work, her life is in India. But if she goes back home, she will surely be arrested, if not worse. That Hindutva ideology is patriarchal, anti-woman, is beyond question. Ram without Sita, Kali or Durga tamed and sanitized, and India's real-life goddesses, our daughters, are raped, brutalized, disempowered. One horrific display of Hindutva misogyny was the sad episode of the Bulli Bai and Sulli deals, when Hindutva-aligned youth created an app where Muslim women, real women whose faces were actually shown, were auctioned off virtually. Another was the gang rape and murder of a Dalit woman in Hathras, UP, by upper caste Hindu men in September of 2020. The victim's body, that is, the evidence, was cremated before her parents could see their daughter and perform the final rites. Not only were people like journalist Siddiq Kappan arrested simply because he was traveling to Hathras to cover this story, but Priyanka and Rahul Gandhi were detained as they were headed to Hathras to be with the family of the victim. Of course, the Gandhis were released quickly, but Kappan is still in jail 2 years later. And what's more, Atikur Rahman, a heart patient, whose crime was simply that he was with Siddiq Kappan, was arrested and is still in jail today. Rahman has been repeatedly refused medical bail, and his doctor has stated his fears that Rahman will die in custody, just like Father Stan Swami. This Hindutva regime makes no pretense about its hatred of Muslims, but makes a big show of being cast blind. Their object, of course, is to win Dalit votes. It is tragic that an increasing percentage of Dalit Indian voters succumb to fear and hatred of Muslims and vote for the Hindutva brigade. The Hindutva movement is following a blueprint drawn up 100 years ago by V.D. Savarkar and his fascist contemporaries. Savarkar argued that India belongs to Hindus alone and that Muslims and Christians were foreigners and do not belong. Savarkar admired Hitler and Mussolini and wanted India's Muslims to be treated exactly like the Jews of Europe. Godse, Mahatma Gandhi's assassin, was a follower of Savarkar and Hindutva, and today the same playbook is at an advanced stage. The Hindutvadis delivered on the promise that Babri Masjid would be demolished, also on the promise that Ram Mandir yahin banega. They are hard at work on the promise that Kashi Mathura baki hai. And we see bulldozer Raj with bulldozers mowing down Muslim homes and mosques throughout India, and even making a star appearance in the India Day parade in Edison, New Jersey. Hindutva has delivered on all its promises so far, and if we do not stop this monstrosity of hate in its tracks, it will deliver on its ultimate promise, India as a Hindu Rashtra. In December of last year, Hindutva sadhus and sadhvis in the hundreds gathered in Haridwar for a Dharam Sansad. They explicitly called for a genocide of Muslims. They said they wanted in India what was happening to the Rohingya in Myanmar. They made children march with swords. Some of those same sadhus released a draft constitution at the time of India's 75th anniversary in August. This was their draft constitution for the Hindu Rashtra they are building, and they released it proudly to the press. And these are not fringe religious leaders. They are the powerful religious leaders that are closest to the Prime Minister and the government. For all their claims of being anti-caste, the Constitution was based on Varnashram Dharma, birth-based caste. Caste was the framework for their entire society. The laws and policies were based on the Treta Yuga, when Rama was thought to have lived. And in this Hindutva Rashtra, Muslims and Christians don't have a vote. This vision is far-fetched, no doubt, and hopefully will never be actualized. However, I implore all Indians, especially my fellow Hindus, to wake up, step up, speak up, because this dream of the most extreme of the Hindutva forces ruling India is on the fast track to being realized. There are many who are resisting Hindutva ideology, but not enough from the Hindu community. For most Hindus, it is important that we each be allowed to make up our minds for what we believe and about which religious practices we choose and which we reject. As the Rig Veda states, Ano Bhadrakartavo Yantu Vishvataha. Let noble thoughts come from all directions. Hindus are called to being open-minded. For most Hindus, God is in all people, all creatures, and every part of the universe. If we believe this, we cannot perpetrate or tolerate the rape and murder of a Dalit girl or the lynching of a Muslim boy. For most Hindus, there is no Ram without Sita, no Shiva without Shakti. If we believe this, we cannot tolerate the brutal violence towards women by Hindutva-aligned people and forces. Hindus of conscience must realize that if we do not speak up, step up, stand up against this horror that is Hindutva hatred, we are complicit in the hell it is creating. Please reach out to Hindus for Human Rights to be a part of a movement of Hindus who are radically inclusive and pluralistic and categorically opposed to caste.